All right, I'm throwing this out on YouTube as well, so hopefully we'll see it between the two.
Waiting on it. If you guys got questions for those that are here, go ahead and post them in the chat, or we start at 1 p.m. Central. India, well, thanks for joining, man. So as you're joining in, if you could mute your microphones, that'd be super helpful as we get going. Brazil. I haven't seen Brazil yet. At least that I caught before. That's awesome. What part of Florida are you from, Eric? What's up, Mark?
Yo, yo.
How's it going, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing good. We get started here in a couple minutes.
Matt, I think we need to get a setup like Jake's got with the was that the SM7 on the boom right there.
And where the
Make it a little more legit.
I think so.
and the other
Am I cleared to make that purchase? Yes.
There we go. Anything else I need to tell them, Matt, that you need to buy?
We'll definitely find out by the end of this this call.
Okay, great. Oh, man. How's that? Actually, speaking of, how's the audio video sync between this camera and microphone?
It looks great.
It's good.
Cool. Sometimes it does some wonky stuff. I'm running a GH5 into a Ultra Studio Mini recorder, just straight into Zoom. And I got my new Aero audio interface, the Universal Audio one. Pretty pumped about that. So I'm gonna mute myself until we're ready, Matt.
Sounds good. I'm trying to eat a mint real quick too. just to be clear, for one of the guys on our team, I'm eating a mint because of what I ate. It's for myself, not for anybody else. We'll get started here in a minute. We'll let people start joining in too. If you guys have questions specifically for Jake or anything like that, go ahead and put them in the chat. I think there's some newer guys on here right now. So just so you have some context, we are, I'm on the Life.Church tech team. Greg Backus, who you might see with the fancy LC Life.Church tech thing in the background, is our leader. He manages all the tech, broadcast support, services support, and project management. And when all of this COVID stuff started to hit, we all kind of got together and thought, what can we do to help the general church and just kind of give information and for us to reach people that we haven't been able to reach so far, or maybe learn from each other. So that's what these are all about. And so we've reached out to a lot of different people from all different types of industries, a lot from church and a lot from just professionals in the industry. So we had like an audio one with a guy that mixes audio for NBC, and we had some contractors who do lighting. I'm sure that there's guys that you would recognize for that too. And all those are back on YouTube. But so as the conversation kept going, we were wondering what we could do next. And so we had been looking at Jake's stuff online and at church front stuff, and he has a lot of awesome information. So we thought that we could engage with him and just see what we could come up with, and answer any questions we could have. And so Jake, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. And we should start with what you're using right now. What setup are you using if someone didn't hear it? Because it looks slick, it looks good, and
Great.
It sounds great.
Great to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, the setup I'm using right now is my go-to camera, the Panasonic GH5. That's on a Magic Arm that I have mounted. It's a Magic Arm by Manfrotto. I got this like a couple weeks ago. Awesome little tool. Mounted on my desk. So if my desk goes up or down, the whole setup stays consistent. And then I've got the GH5 going into a Ultra Studio Mini recorder by Blackmagic. Selected that as my video source here in Zoom. And then for audio, I've got the Shure SM7B running into the Aero by Universal Audio interface. So pretty pleased with it. As you guys said earlier, as long as the video and audio looks like it's syncing up okay, I guess I'm good to go.
Yeah, man, it looks great. Well, we got some questions. If you might have saw a couple weeks ago, Jake and I hopped on Instagram Live and just asked some questions there. So we'll talk about those for a little bit, but I came up with some other questions with our team and whatnot. We send them over to Jake. So we'll just kind of kick it off, and just curious in general, how you came to start Church Front. Like, where was that born from? Was it out of like the necessity of answers you were looking for and we're kind of gathering? What did that all look like for you to start off?
Yeah. Church Front was born out of sort of the intersection of things that my journey as a worship leader and things that I was kind of forced to have to learn, just, serving as a worship leader in a mid-sized church. I mean, I've been leading worship since high school, and technology has been a huge part of it the whole time, but especially back like 4 or 5 years ago when I had my first like full-time role at a church that needed a lot of help in the tech area, I just had to really push myself and learn a ton. So I had heard of, tools like Ableton Live and digital mixing consoles and things like that, and which our church at that time had none of that type of thing. But like my own sort of achiever mentality I have and wanting to just make things better all the time. Like I'm kind of always discontent with the way things currently are, for better or worse. But I always pursued excellence and still do to this day, always trying to make things better. But I had to just learn a lot of these things kind of the slow, hard way. I think there's something to be said when you just dive into something like Ableton and you have to like force yourself to sort of just to figure it out on your own. I think you can learn a lot that way. At the same time, sometimes you never learn it on your own. You never learn it the right way. You waste a lot of time. Time is like one of our most, precious assets. And so that's where I was coming from as a worship leader. And then also around that same time, I sort of had this entrepreneurial, I don't know what you want to call it, spark or something that just like kind of occurred within me at the same time when um, I just discovered like I like building things, creating things. I like business. I like um, the idea of like leading a team and just creating something great, right? And especially like 5 years ago, like the church I was working at, it was kind of a frustrating environment because that was not a church where an entrepreneurial leader could thrive. And that's the case for 99% of churches. I think like Life.Church, for example, it seems like the type of church that you guys obviously encourage a lot of entrepreneurship in a lot of different ways because it's, that's kind of the culture and vibe of your church. Like are you guys like you're like the largest church in America, right? In terms of attendance? Are you up there?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
right. So like, you guys value growth, right? You're always growing, and that's kind of like what your executive leadership team's all about. Unfortunately, it's not the case for a lot of churches, and it's hard when you kind of find yourself in a situation where I was, where it's like I had this desire to like grow even the church I was serving at, grow the worship ministry, but it always kind of felt stifled. So, as a worship leader, any church leader, you got to kind of make sure you find the right church environment that's not going to completely stifle it. I think it's okay for leadership sometimes to like, help us slow down when necessary, when it's prudent in a certain situation, but sometimes it's just because they don't want to take big enough risks for the kingdom and move things forward. And that got frustrating. So all these things kind of happening. And then they kind of came into one where I was like, I just can't work at this church anymore and still like enjoy being a worship leader. So I am just not going to be here anymore. And I don't know if there's like weird screen stuff going on here. Oh, let's see. There we go. What was I going to say? Yeah, I just got to the point where like I wanted to start my own thing, and I kind of discovered the whole world of like online content creation, whether you're making a blog or YouTube videos, and like how many people you can reach and help, and just how powerful of a medium that could be. And I took all the things that I was learning as a worship leader and made videos about that, like how to do things with Ableton Live. And I mean, you guys have seen my channel. There's like 200 videos I posted over the course of the past 3 years. And it just started helping a lot of people. And then it eventually got to a point where we've made a product, worship ministry school, and we have like a business that actually like helps people. And really the whole goal of that is to help make it so folks can have some sort of like shortcut, and not have to figure things out the hard way or slow way. So that's the story behind Churchfront. Really the intersection between my own journey as a worship leader, the frustrating things I've tried to figure out on my own over time, but then also just kind of this entrepreneurial drive that I've always had. And one thing that comes to mind, I was at a Hillsong conference in New York, 2016. And I'll never forget this because Brian Houston was talking about the church leadership, and he talked about like the different gifts that Jesus has given to the church in order of like the different types of leaders, and talks about this in, I think it's in Ephesians 5, where some were called to be pastors, some are called to be prophets, some are called to be evangelists, and then some are called to be the apostles. And he like spent some time jamming on that concept of the apostles are kind of the builders of the church, but also a lot of churches don't know what to do with them. And that's kind of what, I'm like, that's me. I feel like I got a lot of self-awareness there in terms of my gifting, calling, how that all fits into the church world. So this is like some weird form of a apostle or whatever. Someone who likes to build up the church. So that's what I feel like Churchfront is ultimately doing. It's like this, we're a business. We're not like a church organization or a nonprofit, like very much a for-profit business, but like, it's still obviously the only reason we exist is to serve the local church with our products and services. So yeah, that's it.
That's cool, man. Very cool. But are you serving right now still as a worship leader or worship pastor anywhere for your current church?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at Mission Lakewood Church. We are a 2-year-old church plant in Lakewood, Colorado. So just Lakewood is like, if you look at Denver on a map, Lakewood is towards the mountains, like just west of Denver.
Cool. Awesome, man. What's this whole, I know a lot of people here have had to like pivot, right? We all had to pivot in some way. How's your team had to pivot and rethinking how you're doing things? I think last week you talked about how you're like filming out of your office or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So for our worship gatherings at Mission Lakewood, what we've been doing is we pre-record worship services during the week. And it's fun. I just, this morning was finishing up our edit, in Final Cut Pro. We had the worship music that's recorded here in my office. I have a studio that like 3 of us can fit in. So we do kind of a stripped down band of 2 vocalists, me on guitar, actually 3 of us singing, and then me on guitar, and then Chipper, my MD, on keys and running tracks. And really simple setup in terms of musicianship. And then with video setup, we record, we have 3 cameras and they go into an ATEM. We do multi-track record into Ableton, and then we'll mix it down after the fact. We have it set up where we could mix it down while we record, and that'll come in handy when we actually do live streaming someday. But there's not really a need for it right now. So we pre-produce the music, and then our pastor pre-produces his sermon, but he's been more like creative with it. Like he'll go on different locations to film different parts of the sermon, and it just kind of makes it visually a whole lot more interesting. And I forgot, because we're on Zoom, I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys what exactly I'm talking about here, to kind of get a feel for what this looks like. So let's see, share screen. We've got desktop 2, share. Yeah. So here is what it looks like. So we've got the beginning of the service. So this week he was talking about slowing down or whatever. So he does like an intro, and then this is our setup. So we've got 1 angle, 2 angle, and then piano hands there, 3 angle. We overlay lyrics with Pro Presenter. Everything goes into the ATEM, like I said, and then we just record it. I think I use Wirecast to record the final program feed. And there's our worship set. And then Pastor Darvin goes and preaches his pastor. So he's like driving down the road preaching. Probably not even legal to do that, but. And then we've got, closing set. And that's really it. So like our current setup with our service is pretty simple, but we're just been pre-recording. And then what we're going to do, because now I think you can have 10 people meet together in Colorado. So our plan is again, our situation's unique. We set up and tear down in a local high school every Sunday under normal circumstances. But that high school said like, basically nobody's allowed to use our facilities until like August or September, right? So we don't have our normal facilities that we can even use for the next few months, even as the quarantine stuff starts to lift. So we found a local venue. It's like a wedding funeral chapel place, but it's a really nice spot. And the owner of this venue is super generous, and he's letting us pretty much use it for free whenever we want, which is amazing. And what we're going to start doing is host some in-person small gatherings at this venue, probably on Sunday nights or something, just to start getting people together. The plan is at least continue on for the first few weeks of that. We're going to keep just doing the way we regularly produce our online content, because to get all our gear to this venue and record over there and have to move it, take it down and move it, just not really realistic for the situation. So because it's so much more efficient the way we're currently doing things, and the end product is really great for online church, like we're just going to keep doing that. I imagine though, eventually we'll get to a point where we'll get back to the high school, and then we can actually explore doing like a true live stream or things like that, where that'll make more sense then.
That's cool. It's a cool idea for a lot of people who are kind of in that mode of having to pre-produce, but are kind of getting tired of doing the same thing over the last 8 weeks or so, however it's been. So it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Is there anything about that process that you think you'll kind of keep going once you're live again? Any more like pre-produced things, or like does the pastor like
Well,
how it's
I
been
thought,
creative and
yeah, I mean, I don't think when we get back to regular services in the high school, I don't think like he'll do his sermons like the way he's doing them now, like I just showed you. Like I think the recording we capture on Sunday morning, that will be the way we do it, because that's still probably a good 3 to 4 hours of time for them to shoot it and then get it edited and all that stuff after the fact. It works fine right now when we're not meeting. So I don't think we'll continue to do that. But I think the concept, I kind of like the sim live idea too, though, of just like, especially for a church in our situation, we can get like a good, living as one encoder and stream from our high school, which has horrible internet service there or whatever, or stream from our cellular service. But I'm also leaning more towards capturing a really good, multicam of the service a lot, and then giving ourselves the time to mix things down better on Monday or Tuesday or during the week, and then uploading it to Restream. That's the service we use right now. And then scheduling the stream to go live the following Sunday at 10 a.m. So we're doing a simulated live of the previous Sunday service at the same time on Sunday. That, like, to me seems like one of the best ways to just maintain that production quality, especially given our circumstances of how much team members we actually have too, right? Because if we do a true live stream on Sunday morning, even though I have a really efficient setup with our ATEM switcher and we mix in Ableton, like it's still going to require like 1 or 2 additional people on our team to make those, to mix the audio as well as do video directing and stuff like that. So
Right.
the sim live approach, I feel like, is the best like hack, so to speak, for guys in smaller church situations where you maybe like, we have the tech. It's just like sometimes though, you can't, as much as I love to automate everything, you need additional people to get some of this stuff done. So.
right, just for reliability's sake in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a question that someone had asked last week, about should you keep pre-recording or should you, try to go live, different things like that. And I think last week we kind of said that it's really your preference. It's where your comfort level is. And, if you're good with the one take and shooting it out there, then why not, but if you want the higher quality maybe, or produce a little bit more, then maybe, the sim live's the way to go. And I know a ton of people have been doing that. So
Yep.
I think context for even Life.Church is that we're kind of rolling, right? Like everyone, we capture, and then it rolls at the designated times for them. It doesn't necessarily follow like the campus schedule. So
yeah,
I agree. I think in either way is good, but that's awesome, man. Let's see, what else did we get? So I know you've done a ton of like this is how you get started in streaming. This is what you do right now. But I'm kind of curious, like, what's the top 3 questions you've heard people on YouTube or have reached out to you or said, how do I do X, Y, and Z? What's like the top 3 or so questions you've had, and
yeah,
dive into that, because I'm sure people can take away from that.
yeah. It's funny. The first one that comes to mind for me, I've heard people a lot, is like, how do I get my hands on a video capture device? Because everything's like out of stock right now. Overall, the live streaming stuff is like, once people see like one of my videos or my course, like to get it up and running, pretty straightforward. But to kind of list off some of the common ones, especially because we did some surveying before I made my course, just to get an idea of what people were kind of struggling with there, when we had like hundreds of responses, but they all kind of sounded the same. So I think the popular ones are like, besides trying to find things that are out of stock, I can't really help them much there, other than just Google harder, try to find things, but try to just keep researching. Or there are some alternatives too, for like different types of video capture devices. Like if you can't find the Blackmagic ones or the AJA ones, you can get Elgato makes ones. Like, a lot of the gaming industry has a lot of stuff that we can leverage, for live streaming things. Another common question, people ask, what type of internet do we have to have, internet speeds for a reliable stream? That's a common one. And I think like at least minimum, like 5 megabytes a second upload speed. And you can easily Google that, get your speed test figured out by just Googling internet speed test, and then you can check it. Make sure you're hardwired into a local area network. Make sure you're not using Comcast for like internet. It's just so glitchy for me, dude. I feel like I have to reset maybe it's my route, or maybe it's my modem or something. I feel like in my office here, I have to reset that like once a week for it to function right. So there's that, or you can just get a really good encoder, like what Living as One has. So like you guys use all their stuff, right?
Yeah, we use a couple of different products, and Living as One is one of them that we use especially for folks that are out of like our same time zone, things like that. We use Living as One for that. Cool. Yeah. And other questions too around like mixing. How do we get it to sound good? And I always come back to, and I learned this from Luke Hendrickson. You guys, I think you had him on here a couple of weeks ago, but just mix in a DAW. Like, just don't. Yeah. Like, I don't know. The thing about, I think regular digital mixing consoles, I actually think we're gonna see those things go. Regular digital mixing consoles, I feel like are gonna go extinct, maybe in 5 to 10 years from now. I think what we see with like the Waves LV1 systems and all that stuff, I feel like that's the future of mixing. Cause like, when I can get one of those from our church as soon as possible, like I'm going to get rid of all of our Behringer stuff and Midas stuff. And like, it's just like, cause all these mixing consoles are now, they're just computers with, preamps in them that you can like plug the devices into. And, these mixing consoles are just so limiting in the amount of plugins and stuff that you can put onto your channels and really process things and emulate some really great plugins. So that's why I'd say like go the DAW route. I'm using Ableton. You can use a lot of stock plugins in Ableton to mix it down really well, but then you can start using the plugins from like Waves and stuff like that, and that can really, really help dial in the sound even better. I think that's the biggest kind of mistake I see churches making, investing into these really expensive additional mixing consoles. And then at the end of the day, their mix doesn't even sound that good. Like you could like mix it so much better in a DAW, and it like saves you money, and it literally sounds, and what matters the most is not the money. It's like, if it costs more to mix in a DAW, I would do that still, like, cause if it sounds better. Right. But I don't know, just in my opinion. And that was funny. Like Luke Hendrickson, I was talking to their team, the Production Online guys, a couple of weeks ago, and Luke Hendrickson went out to Hillsong, and they have this like humongous, big production studio for their mix. And he ended up just like being like, here, use this Pro Tools template instead. And it's just like, it sounded so much better after that. Cause I even noticed, I was like, I was listening to Hillsong streams. I remember like a year ago or whatever, I was like, I feel like their mix their broadcast mix could use some work. And I don't know how they were doing it, but apparently that's how they were doing it. So it's like, and then they put a DAW in there, and now it's like, this is awesome. So that's my thing, is like, but even before you get, you have a DAW or whatever, it's like, you got to make sure you know how to the basics and fundamentals of processing and mixing. And it's not as complicated as a lot of people think. Like, but if you don't know what gain is and how to do basic EQ and compression, and then maybe some verb and delay if you want to get fancy, right? Like, that it doesn't matter what tool you have, it's not going to sound good. Yeah, that's good advice. And we did if you haven't seen it, we did an audio tech talk a couple of weeks ago, and there were some pretty awesome brains in that one. For us, we do both. So we have a Yamaha console that we use upstairs for a broadcast mix, and we also have another DAW station in a studio that we have that's in another building, and that's all ran on Pro Tools. And really, it comes down to redundancy. We do both. People have different, thoughts and whatever for it. But if you don't know what a DAW is, it's a digital audio workstation. So it's like Ableton, Pro Tools. There's a couple other products out there. Those are probably the bigger ones. Logic's another one. those are great tools that you can use and utilize. And it for sure is a great tool to use, but you do have to have some understanding of like what that means. What's it mean to have gain structure, anything else. And so there's awesome tutorials out there. I really liked our talk that we did with that, and guys gave kind of really good perspective on how to start mixing in that and what it's like, going from like a front of house mix to a broadcast mix or a mix for a video, something along those lines. So yeah, I think that's great advice, man. Is there anything else you've been hearing a lot of that you've had to answer?
Yeah, I should have wrote this down when I was thinking through it, because I had another one kind of left me. I mean, the thing about live streaming is like you have audio is like half of it, but then the video is half of it. And a lot of churches are just realizing like, yeah, you can have a really simple stream. There's a lot of great tools to help you get set up with a really simple stream, but like to pull off something even remotely similar to like what they would see you guys doing at Life.Church or Hillsong or Elevation or Bethel, it's like you guys like have been, investing a lot of resources, time, team power, like people into making what you have possible. And it's just like, what's kind of sad is I see a lot of worship leaders coming to me saying like, hey, my pastor told me to build this like amazing multicam production system on like $200. It's like,
Right.
you're not going to get very far with that. Right. So, and that all comes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, is like your church's overall like culture and value system, and like what matters most, because that's ultimately where the money goes. And like, if there's no money for production stuff, then that probably is a sign that it's just not valued. So
yeah, for sure. And so I think I even saw something today in one of the Facebook groups where people were trying to talk about how you get your pastor to give you X, get you more money, or they want, and I refrain a lot from talking in some of those kind of discussions, but I think you nailed it, man. Like if your pastor's like, I want the sun, the moon, the stars, but you don't have a way to get there, just be honest with them. I want to dream with you. I want to get there, but this is the reality of what it costs, They'll buy it right or buy it twice thing is real life. So I think that's great advice, man. And I could not agree more. But with that said, let's do a fun exercise, if you will. So the church that, that's never really put a lot of emphasis into streaming or being online, they were told you no longer can meet, but they still got to pay the bills. So they've been trying to set up an iPhone, an iPad, shoot something, and then put it on YouTube, Facebook, you name it. They're trying to do it right now. They've got, let's say, sub $10,000 that they're saying, we're going to invest into this. There's a basic system. I know Living as One has like their out of the back box deal. That's like a camera, their Ray encoder, and some other inner working stuff. But what would you say, like someone could take right now, they could write down, these are the things that you need, given that they're not sold out and you can find them, that you can get up and running, camera to encode, all those sort of things. What would you say? This is what I think you should do. That would be solid for you.
totally. Yeah. So what I think you should do is kind of similar to, again, I'll speak out of the context of my church, and also like to give the caveat, like there's so many different routes you can go with cameras.
Yeah.
Well, maybe video switchers, I feel like there's not as many, but like cameras especially, I feel like there's so many different options out there. But
For sure.
I'll tell you why I like the setup that we have, and maybe if I were to tweak things along the way, what options I would explore. So let's talk about camera setup like first, for churches, because with live streaming you've got camera capture, then we could talk about presentation capture, and then we also talk about audio capture. So talking about the video capture with cameras, I strongly recommend for a lot of churches, especially if they're similar situation to us, where it's like, I don't know, you don't have a permanent space that you're like investing into, you're portable or whatever. I like a lot of the mirrorless cameras that are out there, like the GH5 by Panasonic, or even the Blackmagic line of cameras. the pocket cinema cameras. I'm thinking of in the near future getting a few of those for like a lot of the filming we do at church front. At the same time, there's some trade-off because the pocket cinema cameras just aren't as versatile as the GH5 is. Like they do have like nicer sensors. You can put, especially with you can get the Canon lenses on it. You can invest more and get a nicer image. Just not as a versatile. Battery life isn't great or whatever. I don't know, but there's always ways around this stuff. But I'll stick with, I would get for your camera system. And this is, again, if we're working with like under 10K, these cameras kind of add up quickly. The GH5 is probably the best bang for your buck, especially with a micro four third system. You're just going to get more camera for your dollar, even though it might not look as good as a full frame system. So let's say 2 to 3 camera bodies if you got GH5s. And then if you got some like, let's say $500 lenses, I mean, right there, we're already talking, that's over half your budget, right? So then you have to kind of decide, do I want all 3 cameras? That's probably, because it's probably like 5 or 6K. And I'm just like guesstimating costs right here. But that's a big one because like video image quality is like kind of a big deal. And I think for most churches too, a lot of the other gear I'll talk about, like they already have probably like 80% of the stuff. They just need to know how to put it together, right? Because a lot of the gear we're using for our normal live Sunday services, like you can utilize the same gear for the video production that we're going to do, right? So there's a few pissing out. So I would say get some nice mirrorless cameras like the Panasonic GH5. Alternatively, though, if you have a permanent space, and again, like the other big factor here is like, are you going to have camera operators? Or are these just going to be cameras that you can just sit on a tripod, point them in the right direction, and then you just can kind of cut to whichever angle you want, right? Because if you, with the cameras I'm listing off right now, like that's what you have to do. You can't, remote control them. You could, if you go the PTZ optics route, there's like some great remote control cameras. The downside of those is like, they're pretty much only good for sitting somewhere, in your sanctuary, and you can remote control them, pan, tilt, zoom, but you can't like do any run and gun video production with a PTZ optics camera. So that's why I like these mirrorless camera routes, because not only can you use it for your live streams on Sunday or whatever you're recording in your sanctuary, but you can also use them for other creative projects that you have, at your church. Because I'm guessing for you guys at Life.Church, you have like your video production gear that stays in the worship space or your broadcast space all the time. And then your film team has their own set of gear that they're using for other things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like, but most churches, they're going to want to double dip on the video, because in the end of the day, you could accomplish both of those things with the same cameras. So that's the camera recommendation I have. And then but you also want to get a video switcher. So today I want to encourage you guys listening to this, check out my YouTube channel. I gave a really like a 20-minute introduction to the world of ATEM switchers. Blackmagic ATEM switchers are really popular choice for a lot of folks. And they have a very wide range of accessibility. Like they can start out as low as like a few $100s, or like $1,000, or up to multiple thousands of dollars, depending on how many video inputs you need. I have the Television Studio HD, and it has 8 inputs that you can put into it. So 8 cameras or presentation software, things like that. And it also has 2 XLR inputs. So our mix from our broadcast mix, our template, can go into directly into the ATEM. So then out of the ATEM, you have all the combined video and audio. It's all cut into one final program feed that you're going to be publishing, and you're ready to go. So I saw Sam ask, can the Television Studio HD do 4K? It cannot. So to get 4K, you have to get the Production Studio 4K, which is kind of the next level up. That one's around, I say like $1,600. So I'd like to get my hands on one of those, because it would be nice to be able to do 4K, especially if you're like pre-recording and publishing. That's the video switchers I would recommend, ATEM switchers. And then you're going to need some sort of video capture device, like something that can take video and send it into your computer, like from the video from your switcher, or it can also take video and send it out of your computer from like Pro Presenter for like lower thirds lyrics to put on your broadcast feed. So my favorite piece of gear is the for this purpose is a Decklink Duo 2 by Blackmagic. I made a video about that as well a few weeks ago, about creating like a PCIe expansion chassis for your worship tech computer setup. And it just gives you a whole lot of flexibility instead of having to mess around with a bunch of HDMI dongles coming out of your computer, which are very unreliable. You can use a video capture device like the Decklink Duo, put it in a Thunderbolt chassis, and then you have one Thunderbolt cable coming out of your computer into the chassis, and then you can have up to 4 video inputs or outputs. So when I was demoing this the other day in my space, and again, I just made a video about this just so you can see this happening. I had Pro Presenter sending its lower thirds lyrics into or out of the computer through the Decklink Duo, and then from the Decklink Duo into the ATEM switcher. So when I looked at my ATEM, camera 5 was my Pro Presenter lyrics, and I applied a key to it, and then I just had the white lyrics overlaying my program feed. And then out of the program output on the ATEM switcher that had my mixed audio and lyrics and all that, that was going back to the Decklink and then into the same computer that was running Pro Presenter and then into my streaming software. So now we could take that program feed, put it into streaming software and send it online. So from a video capture standpoint, like, I mean, there's lots of other little pieces of gear and accessories and stuff like that. But I think the biggest ones that make it really reliable and robust for churches are good mirrorless cameras, and then the ATEM video switcher, and then some sort of video capture card, so that the way you can communicate between your Pro Presenter computer and live streaming software computer with your switcher, it's going to be a lot easier. And you're just going to do that over SDI cables. Yeah, lots of ways you can customize this whole setup. Like if you get the ATEM Mini Pro, it's a cool device. Everybody, I think it's a little hyped up, a little overrated. Like I think it's great. Like I think it's really cool, but I think I wish they would like take the same features of the ATEM Mini Pro and then put those in like the Television Studio HD, just so you have more inputs and outputs to work with. Cause I feel like only 4 inputs can kind of be limiting in a lot of situations, especially if you try to, if you're trying to grow your system over time, because maybe you don't have to start with 5 cameras now, but maybe eventually you'll get there.
Right.
So lots of different routes there. And then the other one we've already mentioned is some sort of software encoder. The Living as One encoder is probably the best one. The Ray encoder starts out at like $1,200. It's like it's basically a computer. And you can take your program output from your ATEM, go into the Ray encoder, and then Living as One does its magic to like deliver that information to the internet in a pretty much fail-safe way, or whatever you want to call it. It's like it's going to be really reliable. So hope that kind of helps. I think it's going to be it could be less than 10K to invest in something like that, or it could be a lot more depending on how many cameras you add. But like a good video switcher, $1,000. I really think a lot of churches should get the video capture device and PCI chassis. That's like another $1,000. And then the cameras, though, that's going to be anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a piece. You could look into some nice prosumer camcorders. Pretty much anything has HDMI or SDI out is going to work well. So,
yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's all in what you need right now. You know, like the Living as One kind of out of the box deal. They give you a camera, they give you a way to encode, and you log into their streaming platform, and you're off to the races. So it's all in what you want and scalability of all that stuff. But there are some guys who aren't on like they're not totally new to it, but maybe they've got a few cameras, or maybe they've been using a smaller switcher or something like that. And you know, right now they're like, okay, I kind of want to do more. If anything, this kind of time showed me that I want to do more and expand what we're doing. Where would you say to go next that you've seen? Is it a better quality switcher? Maybe more cameras? Do you have any thoughts there, or talk about that at all?
I think most churches could really improve the audio side of things. I think
Yeah.
that even beyond video. And then I would say after that, so like mixing it in a DAW, getting the right plugins set up, and maybe there just has to be some like philosophical differences in how they're mixing or whatever. I don't know. We all, because sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, well, someone thinks is amazing mix. I think it's garbage, right? So I don't know whose opinion matters more on that, right? And then the other one is like with video quality. The reason I like stay away from the PTZ optics route, like the upside you get with those cameras is like the remote control capability and like all that cool stuff. But like the sensors aren't that great and the lenses don't look that awesome. Like there's always like these pros and cons in the camera world. And I think if people want to like take it to the next level, then yeah, get some like, I think my dream scenario, if I were in a church that had, we had a permanent building and we could really invest into some great stuff. And we could even put some camera ops on cameras. I would go pretty much all black magic, I think, with our cameras and get, maybe the Canon mount lenses. Cause that's just going to look amazing, but then also it's only going to look as good as well as it's lit too. I mean, there's other things to think about too. That's the thing. There's just all these variables. It's like someone could be like, oh, I need a new it doesn't look good. I need a new camera. It's like, no, your exposure is just horrible. Like your lighting in the room's not very good. And then you got to know how to dial in the settings of the camera you have. And it could actually look pretty decent. So, but to answer your question, my first gut reaction is say like most people they can make a lot more improvements around audio before, because video I feel like is harder to mess up. Audio is easy to mess up.
Yeah, and training goes a long way with that too. Just practice
Yeah.
and practice. And I think through all these talks, even when we talked about lights, a lot of the lighting guys were like, what we do is it's all important, but if you can't hear anything on a stream or on a broadcast, then you're kind of missing the point. So yeah, I think that's great advice for everyone. And someone just asked in the chat, what are you doing to record out of your program feed? If you see the chat there.
Yeah. So what we've been doing is, because this is a dumb thing about these Blackmagic switches, at least the Television Studio HD and above. I think on the old model, the Television Studio HD, there was a feature where you could record from that thing onto your hard drive on your computer, and like that made sense. But they like took that feature away within newer ones. At least that was the research I found, because they have the Blackmagic Media Express application or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to have a video capture device, like I said, either the Decklink Duo 2, you're going to go SDI from the program out on the ATEM into your Decklink Duo 2, or other video capture device like the Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. That's what I'm using right now to get this video into Zoom. You could use something like that. Then I put it into Ecamm or Wirecast, and then just use the record feature in that software, and that will record the video file wherever you want on your hard drive or external hard drive. So that's how I'm recording it.
What did he ask about storage? Do you just have a hard drive somewhere? Do you do cloud-based for the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah. So right now we're using these 1 terabyte solid states by G Drive. And I wish, I wonder if they make bigger ones, because I kind of want to buy them. Like what we're doing for our worship production stuff is like, like 10% of the video production I do here, like in this office, because most of it's for like church front. And we're like having major issues right now with like managing storage and stuff like that. But I would I'll pull it up right here for you guys. Here is. Who's got the forklift? There we go. Okay, so you guys see this? This is the G drives that I've been loving and using. So we've been using the 1 terabyte ones, but I'm kind of tempted to pick up one of these guys just so we have more space to work with. So it's portable, awesome external hard drive solution. So that works. If I had a permanent space though, I'd be looking into, and this is what we're going to do here pretty soon for Churchfront, is a, what they call it, a NAS, network access server or something like that, where you can have up to like, I think the one I was building out on B&H Photo was going to have like 120 terabytes, and you can access it via Thunderbolt or 10 gigabit Ethernet or whatever. I'm not that much of an IT guy, but I feel like I know enough now to store a lot of stuff. That would be awesome, but that solution costs like $5,000-$6,000 for one of those. So in the meantime, I think the best thing to do is have like a 1 or 2 terabyte solid state drive that you can kind of do your current projects on, and then just like then get like a cheap like 12 terabyte backup drive by like Seagate or something, that if you want to just archive stuff, you can archive it every couple weeks and you should be fine. So that's kind of what we're doing now.
Nice. Had a question on YouTube saying what you're talking about plugins and such on using a DAW. Do you have any plugins for Pro Tools or anything like that that are like your go-to, like your top couple that you use for mixing in the DAW?
Yeah, and I definitely got to credit Luke Hendrickson, because he's the one like pioneering this whole field and stuff. And I got his template, so we kind of list off all the plugins he used. But they're all pretty much all Waves plugins. So in terms of EQ processing, what is it? The SSL channel plugin, I think that's what it's called. And then there's like this was a CLA 2A compressors, multi-band compression. I don't have the list of specific names of those plugins right now. But in terms of like individual channel processing, those work great. But here's the thing. It's like when you just know how to really dial in your EQ properly, even with stock plugins, like you can make it sound really, really awesome. Right? I think for a lot of folks, it could be a combination of, you don't necessarily have to drop $1,000 on Waves plugins. Like you could start with stock plugins and then maybe get a few key ones, like maybe get the BBE sonic harmonizer and maximizer for your mastering on the master output or whatever, and that will help make it shine and sparkle for you on your final mix. And then like make sure you get Waves, the Waves Real Tune, the real-time auto tune from Waves. It's like $70. That's going to be one of the biggest things to make your live stream sound a lot better, because nobody sings in perfect pitch, and like that really gets emphasized in broadcast. So put vocal tuning on there. So if I wasn't using Waves plugins, I would like use stock plugins and definitely auto tune. And I feel like you could, in Pro Tools or Ableton or Logic, there's plenty of built-in plugins to really dial that in well. And then when you're ready to use like these like really cool, the plugins that emulate these like amazing pieces of gear, like these compressors and stuff like that, then you can start buying those as well too. But yeah, I hope that kind of points them in the right direction. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was the drum triggers. That's like where I feel like when I got Luke's template, I feel like 80% of what carries that template to sound so amazing for like a live band is the drum triggers, because that's the thing. Drums are like the hardest thing to make sound good in a mix, especially a broadcast mix, and even in a live mix. And like the drum triggers template, like by Steven Slate, like the Trigger 2 plugin, and then you get the library of presets for it. Like that is probably the coolest shortcut hack I've ever come across when it comes to mixing. Like people will just, when you just get replacement drums in there, your mix will sound so much better immediately.
That's good advice. I think that answered the question. That's really good. Let's see here. Other questions I had. Well, Sweet Pete, if you see him, you know who Sweet Pete is, because he's got the luscious beard that I think has grown 6 inches in the last 2 months. We've never met, but he's been on every call that we've had, everyone, I think. And you asked about something, Pete, philosophy behind what you stream or platforms. Do you want to elaborate on that question?
Yeah, I think so much for, production tech guys. We get so involved with like equipment and like what is Life.Church using or what is your church using and what is someone else using. And, every church is going to look different, but maybe we can have like a similar philosophy by like what we're streaming or how we're streaming it, what platform we're streaming to, and why. I think my biggest thing is I want to know the why behind things, not necessarily like, yeah, you can use Ableton, you can use Logic, you can use Blackmagic cameras, you can use Sony mirrorless, the GH5. That's all great, but unless you know the why behind it or the philosophy behind what you're using and why you're using it, it doesn't matter really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my thoughts there in terms of like, so there's the why behind the gear. A lot of the gear setups I'll unpack, and what we use is like, we value a few things, right? And then they all kind of come together to create ultimately why, like, I've made the decision with our setup and I give these recommendations. I would say, one of the things because we talk about values is like just excellence in terms of like how good of the quality is the video and audio coming across, right? And then like what are the realistic gear purchases that will help us have HD video, really well mixed audio, and all that too. So I think just general, a pursuit of excellence is in my book it's a pretty justified why behind getting this type of gear set up. And then also efficiency. That's another big why for why I recommend this gear setup is like, there's multiple ways to go about creating a lot of like the end product that a lot of us see, in a video, right? Like say just a simple, like that multicam I showed you with my band recording. We could record the video into SD cards into each of the cameras individually and then throw it into Final Cut Pro, create a multicam project, play it back, make our cuts or whatever. But that just like makes the editing time significantly longer, right? So and a lot of us, now a lot of us churches, we're becoming like television studios where we got to crank out content quickly. And that's why we want to implement these tools, especially like a video switcher. It allows you to create a multicam production in real time, right? And that saves a lot of time too. So I would say the big, in terms of the practicality of why are we using this or that gear, and I think this is why Life.Church uses it or Elevation uses it. It's like excellence. We want it to be high quality, and then we also at the same time want to invest for efficiency. So we're not spending unnecessary man hours on these things when the technology exists to make our lives easier in these areas. And then I think the other strategy thing is like, we have to make sure that in everything we're doing, we are creating content for an online audience. And I think that's kind of the paradigm shift. Like a lot of us have to understand, and like the way that we record, and the way that the pastors engage with like cameras and stuff, like encouraging them to like be like, no, you're not, like, especially right now when nobody's really meeting, or some churches are starting to meet, I guess. So we'll probably kind of get back to a normal, but especially when nobody could meet, it like wouldn't make sense to like, record a worship service and a pastor preaching in a room of empty chairs and that pastor to like not look at the actual camera or like pick a camera to be engaging with. Right. So I think we have to make sure like the way we make the content is for the right audience, but at the same time, there's a lot of churches in a scenario where like, I mean, now, especially when we can meet again, where what you have to think through, okay, what does it look like to engage both the online viewer and the people in this room? Right. And the only other thought I had is like, we kind of have to start, I don't know, I think churches have to start thinking just more like media companies in general. Because we can dump a bunch of money into a lot of great gear and stuff like that. But if people like don't take time to actually watch what's going on, like it's kind of a waste. Right. So a lot of that's kind of just strategically knowing like, how do you put a thumbnail on a video? How do you write the right headline for your worship service or stuff like that? This is stuff I think about at church front. Like I'm trying to think about like, what will make when a worship leader or tech team leader is scrolling through their YouTube feed, what's going to make them stop on my video and click it and actually watch it, right? So I almost think churches strategically need to be more intentional about this stuff. And that's not just a video production thing. That's also like a marketing thing, and kind of psychology thing. Those
That's
are my
good.
thoughts.
Yeah, man. Greg, do you have anything to add to that for us? You know, I think it's the same thing: reliability, excellence, and how we execute on something. But a lot of thing is, you know, supporting Pastor Craig's, you know, goals and whatnot. So what's that look like for us, Greg, and how we've even made the shift from our previous broadcast location to where we are right now, and that jump that we took?
Yeah, I would say that our our approach really mirrors what Pastor Craig talks about a lot in his leadership podcast, is a GETMO approach, good enough to move on. And so there's a lot of stuff that we use that there's stuff that Jake's referenced today that we use, you know, in our everyday production. But it's really what's meeting the need. You know, it may, if it meets the need and doesn't break the bank, that's perfect, you know. So you may find some TF, some Yamaha TF stuff floating around in some of the spaces, you know, from a console use at campuses. We're using we're a completely Yamaha house. So, I mean, we're using QL5s and CL5s at campuses. You know, that's just what we've landed on. It meets our needs. It's not the most expensive console. It does have some limitations, but within those limitations, you know, it brings some creativity and innovation. And I think we've gotten kind of innovative on some things in the past to make things work. So, you know, sometimes you can spend a lot on the tool, but if you don't know how to use it, then what's the purpose in spending the money?
Yep.
What was that saying, Greg? What was that saying that you said that you guys have, the GETMO?
GETMO. Yeah. Good enough to move on.
Yeah. That's maybe unpack that a little bit more in terms of what does he mean? What does Pastor Craig mean when he says that?
Well, there, in a lot of ways, it's, you think about, like, there comes a point where you hit a percentage of what is it that people are going to notice, and then what is it that stuff that we notice. So if it's, you know, 65% good enough for you know, and we can hand it off to a volunteer for them to, if they can knock it out of the park at 65%, let's hand it off. If it's a PA that we're talking about, and we're talking about spending, you know, $200,000, or we're talking about spending $1 million, and the difference of that is, you know, if my wife can sit in the auditorium and not tell the difference between the two, and the $200,000 version gets there, then okay, then that's,
Yeah,
let's make that call. It's just some things like that, you know. It's, I hate seeing people that over spec systems, especially in churches. It's kind of been one of my soapboxes, but I hate seeing churches over spec systems, or having consultants, or, you know, integrators that over spec systems for these churches that then require professionals to have to run it, when the majority of churches are running off of volunteers that are not technically trained to do this, and they're coming in and they're serving, and we want it to be as easy as can be for them to come in and have immediate success. So when we do our systems, it is with that mentality and approach, is that, yeah, we could do more, but we're meeting the immediate need, and we're making it easy for people to come in and serve and get plugged in and find success. And we're still bringing excellence in everything we do. You know, that's the approach that we take, is excellence as a mindset. We're not searching for perfection. We're searching for excellence.
Yep.
So that's that in a nutshell. That's the GETMO.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I feel like it's there's the temptation is so common to fall into perfectionism, where Because even, yeah, you could talk about whether it's like spending, investing into gear where you're like, oh, I really want to get the perfect system, and it costs another $250,000, so we got to do it. But it's like, no, it's just like that. Just the return you get on that additional whatever amount, like, really doesn't make it that much better. And or even when we're like editing projects, sometimes like, at Churchfront, like all the videos we're publishing, which get lots of views, like there's points where like we miss things or whatever, or like, I don't know. I like that Getmo saying, because I feel like now I know how to express what I've been feeling a lot of the times when it comes to just not trying to not trying to fall into perfectionism, but still maintain the excellence thing. So I'm totally gonna steal that and use that language with my team going forward.
One of the things that we have, well, at least I have, is done is better than perfect, because perfect is never done.
Also
Yeah, that's
good.
Good.
Yeah, man. Well, Jake, thanks so much, bro. I really appreciate you coming on and, getting on Instagram Live last week, talking through some stuff to kick things off, and then just for joining us and sharing down to even, here's what I think you should do. I think, we've talked about reflecting on things or getting done with something. I wish I would have done something differently. I don't think we haven't in any of these given like a strong, this is what you should do, this is what you should get. So I think this gives people a solid, like, okay, I have direction, I have action to take from this call and stuff. So I appreciate it, man, and all the wisdom you brought. And if you guys have not, which I don't know how you wouldn't have yet, checked out the Churchfront stuff on YouTube and his website, go ahead and do that. There's been a lot of awesome stuff that I've forwarded to a lot of people who have had questions. And then I've heard some lighting things and some audio questions pop up. Go to our YouTube channel too, the Life.Church channel. Just type in Life.Church Tech and it should come up. All of our tech talks are in a folder. You should be able to find those. The audio one specifically, we talked about Luke a little bit, who's at Bethel. We had him. We had our guys here from Life.Church. We had the NBC dude. Like, it was awesome. It was pretty great. Video wise, we had Bethel Elevation on. There's the list goes on. It's been really good, and this call has been awesome too, man. So I really appreciate the time. I appreciate all you guys jumping in. Jake, we'll stay in touch, man, and
Thanks.
be on the lookout for what he has coming up, because it's going to be good stuff. I'm excited to see what this season brings out of everyone, but we'll see you all next time for our next Tech Talk.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye.